My wife and I run a charity to fight human trafficking called Hope for the Sold, and I recently released a book. It's a humorous travel memoir about prayer. So those are the kind of the big two projects that we're working on at the moment.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com.
Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Travel Podcast. I'm AJ. Not a whole lot going on in the world of travel hacking right now, so we decided to drop in an interview we recently did with Jay Brock, founder of hopeforthesoul.com and also director of Red Light, Green Light. He and his wife, Michelle, for the last 6 years have been doing a lot of work to help fight human trafficking. They've been big advocates of human trafficking victims. They've done a lot of very cool work. They've done a lot of travel while they've been doing this work as well. Jay, who we've got on the show here in just a couple minutes, is a very fascinating guy, and he and I just kind of sat down and chatted about travel, his organization, what he's been up to, his travel philosophy, and pretty much just all things travel. So I hope you enjoy. You can find show notes at abroaders.com/JBrock, JAYBROCK, abroaders.com/JBrock. Okay, we've got Jared Brock on the show. Jared, how you doing, man? Thank you for making yourself available.
Yeah, thanks for having me, AJ.
Yeah, so I guess tell the listeners a little bit about yourself. We can kind of jump into travel, kind of some of your experiences from travel, but how are you spending your time right now? What's the project you're working on?
My wife and I run a charity to fight human trafficking called Hope for the Sold, and I recently released a book. It's a humorous travel memoir about prayer. So those are the kind of the big two projects that we're working on at the moment.
Cool, man. That's I've definitely looked into stuff. The Hope for the Soul project looks extremely noble. Now, I read on your website that you've been to quite a few countries. How many countries have you been to now?
Well, we've been to at least 40 countries in the last 6 years of marriage that we can count, as well as we've road tripped through over 45 American states and 10 Canadian provinces. So we've seen quite a bit of the world in our short years of marriage so far.
That's really cool. I have to ask, so did you use frequent flyer miles at all on any of those trips?
Well, I'm Canadian, and it's one of the few things where I would say I wish I was American. I know it sounds terrible, but like I look at like your rewards programs in the States, and because obviously the credit card companies, credit's so loose in the States, it's like, please get into debt. Like, So they offer you these huge deals to get credit cards. We just don't have that in Canada. So we've done a little bit of that. Like, I mean, I think right now I've got enough for like 3 round trips anywhere in the world, but like single tickets. So like, we could both go and then one of us could go individually. That's probably what I'm sitting on right now, but it's certainly not to the Abroaders level of things.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I totally forgot that you were Canadian. That definitely is a game changer, as you say.
Yeah, for sure.
As you say, if you are an American and you haven't done that yet, we'll chat after the show.
What's wrong with you? Yeah.
We could get you going on that. But okay, cool, man. Well, just to kind of let everyone know is pretty cool. Jared actually listens to the Abroaders podcast, and he just shot me an email. This would have been, I don't know, about a month ago in the early May, just kind of as an intro. And man, you've done some really interesting stuff. So you've written for HuffPost, Esquire. You've got all of your not-profit stuff going on right now. And also you said you've performed or you've been granted an audience with the Pope, and you did some stuff in the Vatican. Tell me about all this crazy stuff you've done.
Yeah, well, so like, I mean, I recently wrote this book. It's called A Year of Living Prayerfully, and I basically did a 37,000-mile pilgrimage around the world. I went to 12 different countries for it, including North Korea. But one of the things that we ended up doing was when we were exploring Catholicism for the Catholic chapter, we were granted an audience with Pope Francis and got to have lunch at the Vatican. So yeah, that was a crazy experience, AJ. Like, we received the message on our Skype voicemail at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, and it was like come to the Doma Sancta Marti at noon tomorrow. So we like rush back to Rome, and there's nothing open on Sundays, and we'd been traveling for months. And Michelle and I actually met the Pope in jeans and yoga pants. So, but he's a good guy. So.
That's really cool. Tell me a little bit about, looking at the notes, tell me a little bit about hanging out with monks.
So for the Greek Orthodox chapter, I went to Mount Athos, which is in the Aegean Sea. It's this beautiful giant mountain. Women have been forbidden for over 1,000 years. There's no female animals. They import male-only animals.
Oh, wow.
And the monks on Athos, they pray 7 to 9 hours a day, and they work 7 to 9 hours a day. And I asked one of the monks, I said, when do you sleep? And he said, a good monk will only sleep 1 hour per night. And I said, well, then I will never be a good monk.
Wow, that is that's pretty crazy. And wow. And the final location I'm just super curious about. So you toured North Korea. Was that on your own? Did you have like a tour guide or something? Or
So the reason I wanted to go to North Korea is it's been rated the most dangerous place on earth for Christians 12 years in a row. There's over 50,000 Christians in North Korean concentration camps. So I just wanted to go and like pray and bear witness to the suffering. Like over 1 million people have starved to death in the last 30 years. And so I just wanted to, check it out. So it's far easier to get in as a Canadian. Actually, it's kind of funny, AJ, you guys aren't called Americans there. You're called American imperialists. So, so there you have it. But, so I applied through a government-run, government-sanctioned tour agency. Like they have to be government-sanctioned, of course. And so I flew in to Pyongyang via Beijing, and they confiscated my passport at the border for safekeeping, of course.
Yeah,
and I was assigned a guide, which was actually a guard. Like if I used the washroom, he'd like wait outside or like come and use the sink or whatever. And our hotel, they're like, you can go anywhere you want, just don't leave the hotel. But it wouldn't matter because the hotel was on an island, so you couldn't get away anyways. It was basically a 5-day propaganda tour, but really insightful and just a great opportunity to just like try and understand a different culture. I don't think we'll ever have reconciliation until we have a relationship. So I was just happy to be there and engage in conversations with whoever I could, and just had some interesting debates, and it was a whole other world for sure.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I've never been there. I don't know if you've seen the Vice documentary on North Korea.
I have, yeah.
It's pretty. It's pretty crazy, and they get some pretty big access. That's pretty rare footage. That's pretty cool.
No kidding.
All right, so right now I can't stop thinking of you as like doing anything other than just traveling. But I know that you are busy, and I know that you are working on your projects. So when you're traveling around, is a lot of that travel for your organization? Or do you and your wife just really enjoy to travel, and you carry on with the work of the organization while you travel?
It's interesting because my wife was actually born in Kenya and raised in Ethiopia and Finland. She was a missionary's kid. Her dad works for World Vision, and her mom works for Mission Aviation Fellowship. So for my wife, the airport is like her home. Like we actually go to the airport early and like have dinner, and she gets a tea and a magazine, and she like settles in. Like it's unlike how most people travel. We have a very kind of chill travel schedule, but basically what we try to do is we'll fly somewhere and try to base camp for at least a month in a place, because if you're just doing the whole backpacking thing, it is very difficult to get into any sort of work routine.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you go to somewhere like, let's say, we rented a casita overlooking a lake in Mexico for like $400 a month, and we work our 9 to 5. But then from 5 to midnight, we explore the town. On the weekends, we take out trips to surrounding villages or cities or whatever. And that's a rich way to experience a culture, get kind of your travel bug fixed, but at the same time, still be really productive with what you feel called to do.
Yeah, that's really cool. I definitely prefer slow travel. And it does, each time you uproot, there's like a couple days lost of productivity.
Yes.
It's just, I've dealt with that quite a bit experimenting over the last year or so. Now, when you are traveling, I know that you're kind of traveling and working, staying still, but did you guys do for your documentary, did you do any travel for the sake of that documentary? I remember seeing some footage from Europe. Was that footage you picked up, or did you guys actually go over there?
Yeah, so for our most recent documentary, it's called Red Light, Green Light, and we went to 10 different countries to basically interview the world's experts. So we interviewed the head of anti-trafficking in 3 countries. We met with researchers, police officers. We interviewed a bunch of victims. Like, I mean, AJ, the youngest victim was like 12 years old in the back of a car in a parking garage. Like, she would not, like, there was no sense trying to like shake her hand, let alone get eye contact. Like, it was hard. And there's trafficking happening all over this world. Wherever men are willing to pay for sex, basically, there's going to be trafficking involved because it's so lucrative for pimps and traffickers. So, yeah, so we went to like Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, Hungary, Czech Republic. We went to a bunch of different places, 10 countries in all, I think, for the documentary.
Here's a question for you, not to get too off track, but I think for a lot of people, well, I guess you may have experienced something else, but I feel like for a lot of people, stuff like that is like a conscious decision. And I mean, do you think what is the hope for trying to turn somebody in that situation? You know, how can you convince somebody that has consciously been doing it to no longer do it?
I think a great way, there's actually these programs called John School. So let's say a man has been arrested for soliciting or using trafficked or prostituted person, they can actually avoid getting a criminal record by taking a one-day class that teaches them about sexual addiction, that teaches them about relationships, that teaches them about, STDs, trafficking, the dangers of involving this. And so we've actually interviewed the head of some John schools. We also interviewed a John who had spent $300,000 on porn and prostitution. It's seeing some remarkable results for like drastically decreasing guys returning to use trafficked and prostituted women. So, like, I mean, there's definitely some programs out there that are working. We just need to see those scale in a serious way.
Did you notice any trends in any countries while you were filming your documentary?
Definitely. Every country has its own racism. So here in Canada, First Nations, Aboriginal, like Native women are hugely overrepresented in prostitution. In the States, it's African Americans and Latinos. In Switzerland, it's Brazilians. In Netherlands, it's Hungarians. In Hungary, it's the Roma community. Every country kind of preys on a vulnerable minority group, and it's mostly women from a background of poverty or illiteracy. They don't have economic options. And there's so much money to be made in it. Like, it's the number 3 trade in the world behind drugs and weapons. There's so much money to be made in it. And so traffickers will do anything to traffic women all over the place. Like, we interviewed a woman in Vegas who her number one thing that she's dealing with is 12th grade boys pimping 9th grade girls out of bathrooms stalls at public high schools. Like, this is happening in our countries, it's happening everywhere.
Man, that's nuts.
That's crazy.
Here's a question for you. So for people that, might think they have an idea about what's going on, and I guess what I'm asking is, are there any ways that an honest person would be contributing to this without knowing, if that makes any sense?
There could be a couple. Like, I mean, one is just labor trafficking in general. Like, the things we buy, the clothes and electronics we buy, often will have conflict minerals in them. So make sure you either buy used or from a clean source. Obviously, don't pay for sex, even in countries where it's legal, because there's still a huge percentage of it are either coercion or straight up trafficking.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about right there. And I'm not even going to talk about either side of those decisions. But I could definitely see somebody saying, well, it's legal, which means it's probably regulated and it's probably different and better than the places it's illegal. Is that a sentiment you hear from a lot of people, or people that defend the legalization of it in some countries?
Yeah. Like, I mean, we've interviewed the head of anti-trafficking in the Netherlands, and he's a great guy who's trying to fight human trafficking within the system they have. But it's really hard to determine on site if a woman's been trafficked or not, right? Like, it's not like they all have like bruises on their face or like lashes on their backs, right? Like, these girls are posing in the window. They say it's their choice, but okay, let's say a girl's over 18 and she says it's her choice, but what if she was trafficked in when she was 14 years old? Is it still a choice now that she's 18? It really kind of grays and muddies the waters of choice. And what's interesting is in America, the average age of entry into prostitution is 14 years old. So it's a huge, messy issue. And So we really need to look at it as a culture. And so our hope is that Red Light, Green Light, our documentary, can really help people kind of understand some of the intricacies of this hugely complicated issue.
Oh man, that's really solid. I haven't seen the documentary yet. I just saw the trailer, but it looks fascinating. When you were shooting that and traveling that around, what were some of the more interesting things you saw? Like even off the topic of human trafficking, just in your travels, maybe it involved shooting the documentary, or just, was there any difficulties you got shooting on the street? Did police in any cities or countries hassle you about filming or?
Filming undercover in the red light districts of Amsterdam is, of course, very interesting because men do not want to be on camera when they're out paying for sex. Many of these guys are married. Many of them have careers and jobs that would, they'd be fired in a minute if they were found using this. So you have to be very, very careful when you're filming undercover. But yeah, we've also met some incredible people all over the world who are fighting human trafficking. And that to me is so encouraging that there's good and bad everywhere and good and bad in all of us. And one of the things that I love about traveling, as I know you do, is that you get to make relationships with people all over the world. And I think that that's a huge step towards world peace, is the idea of you can't kill or make an enemy of your friend, right?
Sure.
When you know someone in Afghanistan and you hear what's going on there, you're not like, oh, let's just leave them to it. It's like, oh man, I care about so-and-so. I hope they're doing okay. It just changes how you view a whole nation. So I say the more travel that we can do, the better, and especially if it's on purpose travel. So if we're there to learn, whether it's about prayer or about human trafficking or about whatever, economy, democracy, whatever our issue is, environment, I think we can learn from each other, and that's what's going to make the world a better place.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I'm curious to hear your answer, but I know I can't name a country I've ever been to that I didn't like the people, or that I said, oh, people in X country,
Yes.
It's always been the exact opposite. I can't even think of a country where I even kind of second guessed if the people there were nice or not. It's just everywhere you go, people are great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even in North Korea, you see these moments of humanity break through the facade of the army industrial complex. You see these moments of humanity that are really touching.
Yeah, that's great. So as far as the documentary goes, where can people find that? I'm sorry, we haven't mentioned that earlier.
If you go to redlightgreenlightfilm.com, you can get it where it's in pre-order right now. We're going to be launching it hopefully later this summer on DVD and iTunes, etc. And then the charity is actually called Hope for the Sold, SOLD. And then the book, if you go to livingprayerfully.com, you can actually download the first 2 chapters for free. And if it makes you laugh and you have a good time, then there's links there for where you can pick it up. And all my author royalties are being donated to charity. So we're hoping people really take advantage of that, and hopefully we can do a lot of good in the world in the next year ahead.
And that's awesome. I will definitely make sure to have all of those links on the show notes for this episode. And that's really cool. Here's a question for you. So it's been what you said, about 6 years that you and your wife have done quite a bit of traveling. Over those 6 years, what are some key takeaways as far as let's start with travel preparation or packing or booking travel? Have things radically changed as you've gotten more experience as far as how you find accommodation or how you select a city to go to, or everything logistically getting there?
Yeah. Oh man, there's a bunch of good questions in there. I think our first kind of travel experience together as a married couple was when I first proposed to Michelle. She said that she'd marry me on one condition, and the condition was I had to let her live in a Spanish-speaking country at some point because she had taken Spanish as a minor. So we ended up getting one-way tickets to Costa Rica, and then we traveled from the Panama Canal all the way to Florida by land transport over 5 months. And that was an absolutely formative experience for us. But we took the 100 Things Challenge, where you live on less than 100 combined items. So we had 88 items for our trip. And that was so freeing to realize we didn't need to live with so much stuff. So much so that we then came home and now we live in a 1975 Airstream Silver Bullet trailer. We really simplified. We're carbon neutral. I'm a vegetarian. We don't own cell phones. We just really tried to simplify. So yeah, we go to Central America and we're supposed to be volunteering at this eco farm, and it ends up being just this horrible experience, AJ, with this just really nasty woman running it. It just was a horrible experience. And the mattress that we were supposed to sleep on, she'd gotten it for free from the brothel across the road, and we're it was just so gross. And we were supposed to be there for a month, and we're scrambling. And this woman comes up the road and she said, "Hey, I have to go back to the States for a month. I'm a airline flight attendant. would you take care of my dog? You'll have a free house and car for a month.
Oh my
So
God.
we ended up living in this beautiful like riverside casita for a month for free with her old Suzuki 4x4. And so one thing that I've learned on my travels is that don't overplan, because things can change and you can have like memorable life experiences just by getting on the ground. Like, if we hadn't have flown to Rome, we wouldn't have been in position to have a meeting at the Pope's house. We like, as we were traveling through Central America, would end up on these islands we'd never heard of because we became friends with someone who's like, I'm going to so-and-so, want to come with me? And we've made some lifelong friends because of it, who we then visited back home in, London, England, or in, Boston, Massachusetts. And so, yeah, like, don't overplan a trip. That would be a huge thing, and definitely underpack.
Yeah, I think that's good too. What do you typically do for finding accommodation? Do you typically use Airbnb, a hotel, a hostel?
So we've spent over 250 nights on the road in the last 2 years, and while we were shooting our documentary and then touring it to 96 cities, we only stayed in a hotel. We only paid to stay in a hotel once. So first step for us is working the network of friends and family and relationships. And we can almost always find someone somewhere that we can stay with. And so that, for our charity, makes us incredibly efficient.
Sure.
It's actually fantastic when we do live events. I can look people in the eyes and say, in all truth, that if you donate to Hope for the Soul, we are going to be one of the most efficient charities on the planet for fighting trafficking. There's one person on staff, that's my wife, and that's it. We've had 200 nights on the road with the film. We haven't spent a cent on it. We live very simply. We've just tried to create a margin of time and money to work on projects that we feel that need to be done. So that's been really, really cool. And so, yeah, honestly, like, backup would be like hostels, Airbnb. Sometimes, if you make a good connection, even bed and breakfasts can be good. But for the most part, we end up just staying with friends and family and friends of friends all over the world.
That's really cool, man.
In dozens of countries.
Yeah, that says a lot about your network. That's one of my favorite things about the last few years. I've done a little bit more travel is just continuing to have that expanding network. Thinking about where I have friends in the world right now versus 4 or 5 years ago is really cool to think about. And to think that if you continue to travel, you're going to continue to build equity in even more relationships and develop the other ones.
Totally. Yeah. Like, if you're ever near Toronto, Niagara Falls, come for a campfire and a barbecue at our trailer.
Sweet, man. If you're ever in Detroit, man, you've got a couple couches to crash on.
All right.
So what's next for you right now? I feel like you've got a lot going on. You're launching the documentary. You're still working on the core non-for-profit. And so you guys are back for the summer. So like, when will you take off and where to next?
Well, yeah. So, I spent a year on the road for this book, for the year of Living Prayerfully, and then spent a year writing and editing the book. So I'm going to spend the next year really kind of stewarding that book and sharing it with people and getting it out there. And reviews have been great, which is awesome. And then we're fundraising for our next documentary. We're renovating the website. We're thinking we're going to head to Western Europe this winter. We've been to Berlin before, and it's just a great city, clean, great public transpo.
Yeah, I love Berlin, yeah.
And you can get basically anywhere in Western Europe so fast from Berlin. So we have a couple of projects kind of in the works. I'm working on my next book, obviously, but so we're thinking that's where we're going to station ourselves this winter. But we'll see. That's many months away, so we'll see what happens. But we're thinking Western Europe at this point is where we'll be traveling next.
Cool, man. Very, very, very cool. Well, we're running a little bit low on time. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share with people? Any travel tips? Any feedback? Just anything that you care to say?
I just think you have to be open to experiences, even if they are scary. Like, I walked across a bed of hot coals this year. I went to Westboro Baptist Church, which is not a super happy place. I was in Israel when Ariel Sharon died, and they fired rockets at his house. Like, I've been in some like decently sketchy situations like North Korea, but like I said, there's good and bad everywhere, good and bad in all of us, and we have the opportunity to just make relationships all over the world. So don't shy away from that, and just be brave in your travels.
Cool, man. I love that. Words of wisdom to live by, definitely, man. All right, well, everybody in the show notes, you'll be able to find links. I don't know if you want to just go ahead and say the URLs right now for anyone that's just motivated to type it in right now.
livingprayerfully.com gets you the first 2 chapters of the book for free, and you can also watch the book video trailer there. And then redlightgreenlightfilm.com, that's the documentary, and you can watch the trailer for that as well. So those would be the big 2.
Awesome, man. Jared, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm excited to share this with everybody.
Thanks so much for having me, AJ. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. This week's International Jam of the Week is by a band we've had before. They are Atlas Genius. They are some indie rockers from Australia, and the song is If So. Hope you enjoy.
Hey, brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.
And don't be talking, maybe your mama's fly.